So Ted Cruz did an interview with the Texas Tribune, and I wanted to cover this clip here with you. Here's what Ted said, quote, why are people reluctant on the Republican side to criticize Donald Trump? It's a number of things. Unlike many people in politics, if someone criticizes him, he turns around and punches them in the face. So I want to hear his whole comment here in the video. I haven't watched this video yet, so I'm not actually sure what he's going to say other than the direct quote that they have here. So I'm sure I'll have a lot to say about it. Let's dive into it.
Why are people reluctant on the Republican side to criticize Donald Trump? It's a number of things. Number one, unlike many people in politics, if someone criticizes him, he turns around and punches them in the face. I mean, it's not complicated. And I saw a lot of my colleagues, I saw meetings where he'd get up and different Republican senators would criticize him. He'd spend the whole meeting just like slamming him with a stick.
So, by the way, this is one of the few things that Trump did as a politician that was actually very effective. Because what he did is he made all the other elected Republicans fear him, and because they feared him, they would fall in line and basically do whatever he wanted and vote with him. And so, even though it absolutely makes him an asshole to everybody around him, he becomes deeply unlikable. Nobody would be too close with him because they always fear he's going to stab them in the back and twist the knife. And he did do that, by the way, and there was massively high turnover even in his administration. All those things are true, but politically, it was actually very effective. And that's why a lot of Trump's legislative agenda was achieved. Because of him and the tactical abilities of Mitch McConnell, they were able to get a lot done that they wanted to get done. They, jam-packed the federal courts with far-right justices. They did that massive tax cut for the wealthy. They destroyed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So just a litany of terrible things because he was an effective leader and he ruled through fear. Now, by the way, this is something Democrats never do. The last Democrat who acted like this was maybe Lyndon Johnson. And then before him, maybe FDR. But since then, Democrats have not acted like this at all. And by the way, they pay the price for it. This is why we don't ever really get, one of many reasons why we don't ever really get very progressive new legislation that builds on the New Deal era. So this is something he did right. Now, it's interesting having Ted Cruz admit this. Because guess what? Ted Cruz was cucked by Donald Trump. Donald Trump argued that Ted Cruz's dad killed JFK. Donald Trump said that Ted Cruz's wife is effectively unfuckable. Donald Trump was vicious in the primary against Ted Cruz. And when Trump ended up winning, Ted Cruz went to the RNC and said, hey, vote your conscience. Me. Vote your conscience, me. And then Trump came after him, and the donor class told Ted Cruz, remember who you work for, bitch. And then he bent the knee. And he did phone banking for Donald Trump with that OD soy boy face. So you got cucked by him. What you're describing is what happened to you, Ted. How you got sunned by this bloated buffoon. It's funny he's talking about it. He doesn't realize that it applies to him. Of course this applies to you. That's why you never criticize him in public. Never do it. Unbelievable. All right, let's continue.
That people respond to incentives. People notice that. My view of it. So I would be walking down. So in the Capitol, as you walk from your office to the Capitol to vote, and you do that multiple times a day, there are swarms of reporters that come around. They ask questions constantly. And I had a rule of thumb where I said, listen, I don't comment on tweets. If you want to ask me about policy, you want to ask me about tax policy or national security or immigration, I'll talk about any policy question you want. But if you want to ask me what they did every day you'd have 30 reporters come up and say, did you see Trump's latest tweet?
It's true, by the way.
It was just...
Okay, here's why this is so weaselly. A lot of the tweets they were asking about revolved around policy. So you are commenting on policy by commenting on the tweet. Like, for example, when he, threatened nuclear war with North Korea on a random, Tuesday or whatever it was. And if they ask you about that, you kept oh, well, it's a tweet, so I'm not going to comment on it because I'm just so principled and so serious. No. Or any of the, million things he said about immigration policy on Twitter. This idea that, there's tweets and then there's policy. No, it's Donald Trump. He would often talk policy through tweets, and he would slam other politicians about policy through tweets. So this is Ted Cruz pretending to be holier than thou, pretending like, I'm a serious intellectual who only talks about policy, when he's actually ignoring policy discussions, and he ignored policy discussions just to try to escape the wrath of Trump, because Ted knows even if I, in a nuanced way, disagree with Trump, he's going to come to slit my throat.
That was the question, and my view is, if you ask me about his latest tweet, I got nothing to say on that. Now, part of it is, listen, my view, and I've said this a lot of times.
You're a cuck, and you're weak, and you don't want to lose clout and lose followers because you criticize Donald Trump, even if you're doing it accurately, even if you're doing it for the right reasons. You learn the hard way, hey, I'm not going to win that fight. I'm never going to win that fight. He's more popular than me. So now you bent the knee, and you cucked yourself, and you oftentimes, no, scratch that, always don't lay a glove on him.
I like what we accomplished under Trump. I think there's an incredible record of policy victories. We had the economy booming. We had the lowest unemployment in 50 years.
To be fair to Ted Cruz, it absolutely is accurate that his policy agenda is Trump's policy agenda. That Ted Cruz loves all the tax cuts for the wealthy, all the deregulation, the destruction of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the hawkish foreign policy that increased the drone war, that tore up the Iran nuclear agreement, that destroyed Yemen and sided with Saudi Arabia. All these things Cruz agrees with. So I'll be fair here and I'll say, yes, Donald Trump governed like George W. Bush. You, Ted Cruz, like it when people govern like George W. Bush. So on that front, hey, at least you're consistent. You have consistently terrible and dead wrong politics.
We had the lowest African-American unemployment ever recorded. We had the lowest Hispanic unemployment ever. From
the people who say they hate identity politics, nobody should play identity politics, the second they feel like they have a data point that backs up themselves, they're like, oh, African-American, Hispanic, people of color, bro, we're all about identity shit.
Recorded, the country was safe. I'm incredibly grateful for the policy victories we had. I disagree with a lot of the things Donald Trump says. And I made a decision that I wasn't...
Nobody would ever know that. Because, again, you cucked yourself to him.
...going to be giving color commentary on MSNBC for every tweet or every statement that was obviously indefensible. I think that's the right balance, and I'll tell you, for any Republican, that was a complicated decision. How do you deal with Trump? I made the decision, when he does things that are good and praiseworthy, I will praise him. And when he says things I disagree with, I'm just not going to engage in the day-to-day color commentary.
That's an amazing admission. So when he does positive things, I'll suck him off. When he does negative things, I won't say anything. That's so dishonest. That is so dishonest, man. It would be more honest if you say, I'll praise him when I agree, and I'll disagree with him when I disagree. But he doesn't disagree with him ever. He just keeps his mouth shut, again, because he knows he will pay a political price. And Ted Cruz wants more than anything to eventually be president. And he eventually wants Donald Trump's blessing when he wants to run for president. He wants to be the guy. And so that's really what this comes down to. His own political goals, his career, his aspirations. That's what this comes down to. And he's willing to cuck himself and look pathetic. And it's amazing how he's openly talking about this stuff, not realizing how embarrassing it is for him.
I'm going to leave it. There will be plenty of people on every TV station hyperventilating. And I actually think the American people grew kind of numb to it. Because if you look at the media for 4 years, everything he said and did was World War III. It was like the most unbelievable thing until the next, and I think people got tired of that. I think you see that today where the media is still obsessed with it.
I actually think that part is true. I think the media would oftentimes attack Trump in the worst possible ways, and it wouldn't hurt him, it would help him. Because people started to dislike the media more than they dislike Donald Trump. So I think that part is accurate. But all you need to know here is Ted Cruz is weak. Ted Cruz is a cuck. Ted Cruz is just trying to save his own ass politically by not criticizing Trump, even when he knows Trump is wrong. And it really is a good insight into what goes on internally with the Republican caucus. Nobody is going to break ranks because nobody wants to get his wrath. And that's how you're in a place where it doesn't matter how insane the stuff is that Trump says or what he does or if he gets in bed with QAnon or whatever. They're all just sitting there and either actively agreeing with him loudly or saying nothing. It really is the opposite of courage. They're as cowardly can be. And they're just hoping that he goes away slowly, because they know he can't win a general election now. They're just hoping he goes away slowly. And think about how much this could have been avoided if every step of the way people were principled and intelligent and independent and came out and spoke their mind. A lot of this stuff could have been nipped in the bud much, much earlier on, but now you have a madman running an entire political party. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.